all this heat, the silicon has fragmented.
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments Silicon Daylight Interviews. Joining us this week is Lee from Stuck in Attic.
Hello, everyone. Good to be here. Thanks for having me. Very excited to be here.
Indeed, it's good to have you. Right, so how we like to get started formally is we like to get to know the people behind the games, the studio, and all of that business. And we begin that journey by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Oh, I love this. I love this question because it takes me way back. Yeah, I was about 12 or 13, and I didn't have a computer back home, and we didn't even have an arcade in our town. But there was this guy who had a basement and two. I know this sounds sketchy, but bear with me. So he had a basement and
Jesus, bro.
and he had two 486s. This was back in Mortal Kombat 2 was out, so it must have been after 1995. I don't exactly remember what the year was, but I remember Mortal Kombat 2 was like the hot new freshness. And me and my friends would spend all our lunch money just buying like half an hour of time on these 486s, just yanking our spines out and just chucking fireballs at each other. And yeah, that was my first contact actually with an. I mean, I had played stuff like jumping jack and that kind of stuff, but I was a little bit. I was tiny. I was small. And also, since I'm like a visual, I'm a graphics guy. It wasn't something that captured me as much as Mortal Kombat, with its digitized characters and its cartoony violence and all of that. So it was definitely that's what sparked my interest for video games and also for animation, because we were so taken. Me and my friends, we were all in art school. And we were very much into cartoons and animation, so we were so taken with Mortal Kombat that all our notebooks and our textbooks, we would do flip book animations on the sides of just Sub-Zero just killing his opponents and stuff like that. But
Stuff
the thing
you get away
is,
with back then. Now you'd probably be sent to the office, and parents
Yeah.
called.
Well, teachers. We were at an art oriented school. People were a little bit more lenient about this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm not saying they appreciated like the very graphical skull and stuff, but skull and bones flying out animations and stuff like that. But I mean, it was sort of to be expected from teenagers, and teachers didn't know what the hell a video game was. Like almost nobody had computers. Nobody really knew. It wasn't a thing.
And if they used they used it for like academic stuff, not entertainment.
Yeah.
That takes me back to my high school days. The faculty had no idea what kind of games were on their computers.
On their computers, yeah.
So many first-person shooters.
Yep. The impromptu Quake tournaments at lunch.
Oh God, the good old days. Yeah, it felt like you were.
Memory.
It felt like you were part of some kind of underground cabal or something. I mean, in our case, literally underground, because you had to go underground to play video games. But actually, the thing is that you wouldn't get we would only have the money to buy like 30 minutes worth of time on these PCs, and after that, the guy would just sit down and play other video games, and it was like Twitch ahead of time, because we just stood there watching. People nowadays watch other people play video games because they want to. We did it because we had to, because we would have preferred to do it ourselves, but that was the situation. And that's how, the guy, that's how I came into contact with great stuff like Dark Forces, like Doom. But the game that hit me the most was this guy sat down one day and played Day of the Tentacle, and that just blew my mind. And I think that was the inception point for me wanting to both make animation and video games, and particularly adventure games, because my mind was blown because all the video games I'd seen up to that point were just about action, ultra violence, whether it was first person or third person. But this was a game about living and doing stuff inside a cartoon. Even though it was 320 by 240, it was like majestically animated. Just blew my mind. And I think it opened up my brain to the possibility of just how amazing video games were for creating worlds that you could do stuff in, not just mindless violence, as fun as that is. And I think that's where it clicked for me, because I really, really wanted to. I mean, I didn't even consider animation or video games a career choice at that point, because they were just so far away, like so far removed from everything that I could do back then. I didn't even have a computer. But that's definitely where it clicked for me. And lo and behold, like years and years later, I taught myself animation and started a little studio, and we made a very Day of the Tentacle, but not just Day of the Tentacle inspired, like just a very LucasArts style, classic style adventure. And I don't know, it was just like a very nice round trip around, like decades. It took decades for that little click that happened inside my brain to actually, bear fruit into something. So I don't know, that's pretty cool looking back at it.
Mm-hmm. We find that's often the case with the development people we have on our broadcast. It's why we take that journey from childhood or whenever to this particular, to the present day, because oftentimes that background is in their games.
For sure, yeah.
Like, so you say you're self-taught in terms of animation. How does that go?
Well, I don't know, pretty organically for me. I mean, when I was doing flipbook animation, I didn't really, you kind of don't even think about it as a sort of art form. It's just something that you do because you have it's just like doodling. Like I had been doodling all my life. I didn't really think about it as doing art. It's just like this itch that I had to scratch, and it just came naturally for me. I've been doing it all my life. And then animation, same thing. And of course, up to the point where you get a computer and you get a software and stuff, it just stays, in that area of something fun and funny that you entertain yourself with, but you never consider doing anything more serious with it. But then, like living through all this, this digitization of everything, and then just being able to afford at first like a crappy graphical tablet, and then they got even cheaper and cheaper, and then software got cheaper, and then at some point you realize, holy crap, like I can actually, like, just me, this dude from Romania who hasn't worked in any big studios, hasn't gone to school, I can just watch a tutorial or read a book and I can just teach myself this thing. And so I did. And if anyone's interested in animation, I have this book that I have to recommend. Really helped me out. It's called The Animator's Survival Kit by Richard Williams, one of the biggest animators ever. So that helped me a lot. But really, in my case, it's just a matter of I like to sit down and read things, but I'm not the kind of guy who will sit down and watch tutorials. I just like to sit down and do stuff and just learn everything the hard way. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and I figure out why it doesn't work. So that was sort of the journey for me, and it's just awesome. It felt amazing at the time, but now it feels like everyone can do it. Of course, you have to have that. I don't even know if it's a matter of talent. It's more of an that need to scratch that itch. If you have that itch, then you're gonna go ahead and do something creative. And if you're good at it and you stick with it, then it's gonna work for you. And that doesn't have to just be animation. It can be writing, it can be designing a video game, it can be doing a podcast. It's just you have to have that drive, and you don't even realize you're doing it. At just at some point, you realize you've made something like me and my partner, we also, before doing video games, we made animated music videos, and one of them hit, like, it has like 22 million views or something like that. And it's one of those moments where you realize, oh my god, I'm actually a professional, I guess. uh, didn't plan to, but hey, this is pretty cool. So I guess it's a question of not taking yourself too seriously and waiting for results to come around. Maybe it's a little bit of imposter syndrome too. It was the same with games. Didn't really consider ourselves game developers up to the point where we actually were working full time on a game. That's when we were like, okay, we might be game developers. And we actually realized that we were game developers when we launched our first game. That's the only moment when it clicked. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Um,
Once again, it's not dissimilar to other tales told on our program.
that's great to hear. Actually, I love that. It's great to hear because it means that it's
Yeah.
like this universal experience. It's great.
Hmm. Like, and I suppose the question that comes to mind here is, how long ago did you start this journey? In terms of like actual development, like when you started making like a is it Gibulus?
Give us. Yeah, I have to say this. It's one of the stupidest titles possible. We're very much aware of it, but it's like this. It's like this very particular archaic Lovecraftian word that nobody uses, that nobody really uses
it's just
anymore.
the moon when it's more than half and
Yeah.
less than full, right?
Exactly. Like, there were a few reasons. Just making a small parenthesis on this, there were a few reasons why we chose this name. One of them was because it sounded very Lovecraftian, and the game is very Lovecraftian. And also, we thought, hey, this is a very rare word, so we're gonna get very good SEO, with this, not taking into consideration the fact that even we forget how to spell it somehow. So it wasn't it wasn't the greatest, but we were smart enough to add like Cthulhu and adventure to the subtitle, and so maybe it's easier to reach it that way. Yeah, but to your question, actually one of the inflection points was in 2012 when Double Fine came out with their Double Fine Adventure Kickstarter. Because up to that point, like we were doing some animation. We weren't a studio yet. Like me and my partner and our old programmer, we were working in the same company, like doing different stuff, but we weren't a game studio. We kind of always wanted to do video game stuff. We worked on smaller like mobile games, but it wasn't really something that we wanted to do. And in 2012, when Kickstarter blew up, that's when we realized that Kickstarter could just solve probably the biggest problem that I mean, there are two huge problems that studios have. In general, in the studios, one of them is funding, and then once you have funding and you're actually working on a game, it's visibility. And Kickstarter was amazing because I don't know if you guys remember, but like in 2012, Double Fine raised something like $3 million or something insane, something crazy like that.
I actually helped back that, so yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. Like you were part of history there. Like, yeah. Because we're not businessmen. Generally speaking, people who make indie video games aren't very good businessmen. And I didn't see myself. I didn't see myself talking to VCs, and like just imagine walking up to a person and going like to a business person and going, there's this very niche genre that people used to love back in the 90s, but it's like a tiny niche genre. Please give me 200, no, something like, let's say $100,000 so I could make it. Like people would consider you insane. Like, no, I'm not risking my money on this. And that's when it clicked for us. Like, oh my god, Kickstarter would actually solve this problem, because what people don't necessarily think about when they think about Kickstarter, like it's okay, it's fun, it's nice because you get the money and you can make the game. But the even nicer thing about it is that it's like a free marketing campaign for your game, because there's a lot of people who are just hanging out on Kickstarter, just waiting for cool projects to crop up. And it wasn't easy, because then we found out that you can't actually do a Kickstarter from Romania because of some kind of, I don't know, some kind of bank related stuff. So we had to have someone who we could in another country who we would trust with the entirety of our money, and that was stressful as hell. But I don't know. We did our homework, and we started working on a demo in late 2014, something like that. But we weren't working full time. Just the company we're working for allowed us to use like the software and the hardware and company time whenever we weren't doing something else. We were just scraping by. And over the course of 2015, we just sort of started planning our Kickstarter campaign, working on a three screen demo, and also trying just like reaching out to communities, like adventure game communities, like forums, Reddit, that kind of stuff. Just trying to see if is this something that people want, because embarking on this kind of on a quest like this, it can be pretty scary, because you're putting so much effort into it, but you want to know, like, are people actually interested in this? Would they pay money? Because you have to take this into consideration. It's a commercial project. You have to take whether people would actually pay money for it. And it seemed like there was some enthusiasm about it. And then we finally got the demo done as well as we could. Like we did this vertical slice demo that had like vertical slice basically means that it's as if the game was fully done. So that means background art, animation, voices, music, sound effects, everything. And in 2016, finally, like more than a year later, of course not working full time, but more than a year later, just planning this project, in April of 2016, we put the game up on Kickstarter, and it was funded and then some. And that's when we realized, oh my God, we can just stop doing any other commercial projects that we don't like, and we can just be a real game studio and work on this game. And work on the game we did, and I guess this is a story that every indie game developer will tell you. It always takes a lot longer than you think it's going to take, especially since, this was our first game. We thought we could get it done in 1 year. It took us...
It's a running joke on this program.
Yeah. I mean, we were so naive.
Every time, we would have several studios.
In fact, I have never heard the words, oh yeah, it was easier than we anticipated.
Much shorter amount of time. We thought it would be 3 years, but actually it was a year and a half. Well, I mean, in this case, in the first game's case, we sort of have the excuse of we didn't really know what we were doing. I really like this expression that goes, we were too stupid to know that we couldn't do it, so we did it. That's sort of how the first game felt. But it also took much more than anticipated, because we didn't really want to cut any corners or any content from the game. So we really, really wanted we wanted to do the maximum amount of quality and content that humanly three people could deliver in that amount of time. And I think it's not a perfect game. The story can be confusing because it's maybe I wasn't realizing just how much inspiration I was drawing from Lovecraft, and maybe relying on the fact that people having read cosmic horror. I mean, inevitable pitfalls when you're also trying to adapt certain things, that people maybe haven't read. But the response in general has been like amazing. Like overall on all platforms, we sold over 100,000 copies. And that's just mind-blowing for us. Like, it's very, very hard to believe, because, again, you don't consider yourself like a professional game developer. It's just something that you try to do, and it works out or it doesn't. So that was quite a journey there. So yeah, it just sort of takes you by surprise. But it felt so good not to have to work on projects, where clients are, horrible clients that don't know what they want, and they force their will on you, and then, it doesn't turn out right, and then you're to blame. So it felt very, very good because it's this thing where you own up to all your decisions. Like, everything we're putting all our effort and energy in this project, and then we put it up in front of people, and whatever happens, it's on us. If it's a success, that's great. It's our choices. If it sucks and people don't like it, there is no one else to blame but yourself. And that's both a very scary and a very liberating feeling at the same time. But it's something that I hope for, I hope more creative people get to experience that, for better, or for worse. And it just sort of felt, I don't know, I don't like talk about destiny and that kind of stuff, but it just sort of felt like we were, at least for me, but like also my colleagues, like we were finally where we were supposed to be, after having worked in other domains, like in graphic design and web design and all kind of stuff that I had to do because, I had to put food on the table. Finally felt like reaching where we were supposed to be. And it's a great feeling. And I guess that's one of the reasons that a lot of people, there's such an insane amount of indie studios and indie games just trying to put their game out there and become, established and live off of this, because I guess there's just so many people that feel that that's where they're supposed to be. And I think that's great. And I think it's great for players because they are spoiled for choice. But yeah, as I was saying before, maybe, then comes the ugly problem of discoverability and too many damn games releasing. Even I, as a game developer, everyone realizes there's too many games, and not just that, there's too many good games. How do you guys feel about that, by the way?
We were just having this conversation on Wednesday. It's an interesting problem to have.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Because I remember back in the 90s when I got my first computer back in 97, and Eastern Europe, completely different thing. No original games, just like rips, just like pirated stuff everywhere. But you would get a game. I don't know what the experience was with but I imagine it was sort of similar. You have a game and you would play it for literally months. I remember being stuck in one of the Monkey Islands. I remember being stuck on something for literally 2 months. It was crazy.
For me, it was the Xbox version of Ninja Gaiden, because we didn't have a whole lot of money growing up. So in order to get new games, I had to beat the game.
Yeah,
and my dumbass got the original Ninja Gaiden. This wasn't black, by the way. This was the original Xbox Ninja Gaiden. That was even harder.
Oh God!
I beat it.
Oh wow! Nice,
Eddie.
Yes.
The Xbox Ninja Gaiden isn't the original Ninja Gaiden.
Of that trilogy, it's the reboot. But yes,
just saying.
God. I know.
The original is also very hard.
Oh yeah,
and that's the kind of game I grew up trying to beat to get time out of.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess it makes you into a better person, I guess, if you're forced to play these very hard games. I don't know. If it did that for me. I don't know. I kind of suck at most games, sadly. I'm not afraid to admit that. But I love playing them. But it's the same. It's the same for video games. It's the same for tabletop games. I love playing them. I suck at them. But I think it's, it's just more about the joy of playing them and not necessarily beating them. Yeah. There's this test that you can take. I don't know if you guys are aware of I think it's called the Bartlett test, Bartlett gamer test, something like that. Anyway, there's a test online that you can take, and there are several categories of gamer that you fall into, depending on how you respond to that test. And unsurprisingly, I fell into the explorer category. I guess that's why I'm more interested in story-centric games, because I love to I care a lot about the world, sometimes less than what's happening in the world. World building is just something that I love. But that's what's great about games nowadays, because it doesn't even have to be a narrative-centric game in order for it to have a great world that you can escape to. I'm very, very big into escapism, but I guess we all are, right? I guess we all are.
Indeed.
That certainly fits into what a lot of video games can be and are. Like, like, it's one of those debates that certainly permeates as it does in many art forms. But video games are really adept at creating their own worlds because the interactivity components.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think they're. I don't know. I feel like they're on par with books in this respect. Yeah,
they're basically like books for people who don't have the patience to sit around and read.
Exactly. Yeah, and even more immersive than movies, I would say, because I mean, books have the huge advantage of you. I mean, it's also a bit of interactivity, right? Because they demand of you to imagine everything that goes on in that world. Like it is a guided experience, but you're contributing, and it's sort of the same thing with video games.
I mean, the two worlds have merged quite a few times over the decades. But that's kind of getting into other fields from interactive fiction to visual.
Yeah.
Point and click adventure games are pretty close to that veil as well.
They are. Yeah, they are. I feel like there's weird crossover between books and cartoons, I guess, like animations and books. Yeah, but they're great. They're also a lot more work, I would imagine, than just writing a book. I'm not trying to put down writing books. I know it's a lot of work. I know it takes a lot of time. I can imagine what it goes in, the amount of work that goes into them. But just from a logistical standpoint, it's just from a building, just from the standpoint of building them, they are a lot like making a full length animation, like like you would try to do a Ghibli movie in 3 people. That's what it feels like sometimes.
Well, building a book, and I guess I should quantify that as what an adult would consider a book.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to something that's for children, that's a lot more visual. They don't have to rely on things like animation, special effects, anything of that sort. You just use the mind's eye.
Yeah, and you have this incredible, like, it must be great just to be a writer. I would love to try it sometime because it's like this. There is no limit to what you can describe. And that's why adaptations are so hard because like you'll read a book and the writer can describe something incredible in 5 words, and then you have to put that into images, and it's going to take 3 months to animate.
Yep.
But it's great. It's great to be able to rely on the way your mind collaborates. The person who experiences it collaborates with the author. It's fun to think about these things. It's just like pixel art, for example, right? Pixel art makes you work a little bit for it. Like I don't do pixel art. I'm not good at it. I love doing my thing is very high res, cartoony art. But I really, really love pixel art for the same reason, because it only gives you a tease. It only gives you half the information, or maybe less than half the information, and then you have to your mind has to put your mind imagines everything else, and that's great. It's sort of like impressionism. I don't know if you guys know. There's this game called The Last Door. It's by the guys.
Yes.
Yeah, the guys who made Blasphemous afterwards.
We actually talked to them about The Last Door way back in the day.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so cool. I love those guys.
Rolodex is freaking huge.
That's so cool. I love those guys. I never met them, but it's just amazing. And it's amazing because, obviously Blasphemous looks incredible and it's high res. I mean, relatively high res as far as pixel art goes. But just the amount of atmosphere and just beauty that they managed to create in the last Door with just like these very, very few blocky pixels. It amazes me. And it's that thing, like the brain. You're working with the viewers and the player's brain, and you're asking. They have to put in a little bit of work too, and that's another point where I feel like it's a bit similar to reading a book. There's just like added levels of interactivity.
Right. I remember the last door being very 8-bit.
Yeah.
By design.
The faces are just blocks.
Well, yeah, I mean that's how video games used to be back in the 80s, even the 90s, and really up to, I'd say, the HD era, where you'd have to use your imagination to fill in some gaps here.
Yes.
These days, obviously, we have photorealistic worlds coming out of the woodwork.
Yes. But I feel like that also maybe not necessarily cheapens them. It's cool that the technology is there, but I feel like this is the point in the evolution of this technology where good art direction starts to make a difference. Like where you realize that, okay, like tech is great, but unless you have a real good art director that can not even just make your game look good, it's relatively easy to make a 3D game look good nowadays.
This is the issue that happened with, I believe it's Babylon's Fall. Technologically wise, it looks pretty good, but the art direction was meh.
Yeah, and that happens a lot because it's just like democratization of these tools is great, but then at some point there comes this line of separation, from the pros, from the people who don't really know what they're doing. And, as we were discussing, just like this insane amount of games, again, it's not really just about having a good looking game. It's not that hard to have a good looking game right now, at least in the 3D space, but just like having a striking art style is so much more important, And I feel like it's easier to achieve in 2D than in 3D because you're making everything from scratch. 3D is great. 3D is great because you can just buy assets, and I'm not necessarily against people who buy assets and use them as long as there's proportion there. That
it really depends what they're doing with it. If they're using it as a skeleton and editing and adding their own visual flair, that's fine. If they're just buying a whole bunch of assets and chucking it onto Steam, that's where kind of my problem lies.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And
absolutely.
These currents also exist in the 2D space,
which is very weird for me. Yeah, which is very weird because it's much harder to integrate something 2D into I don't know. It's very strange. Sorry for interrupting, but it's just.
It's fine. It's fine. I mean, well, once again, it goes back to just the sheer amount of video games that get created these days, and this is the end result to the democratization of tools you were talking about.
Yeah.
Because it's never been easier to make a video game.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it still takes a lot of resources, work, what have you, but compared to, times past, it's night and day.
Yeah, the access, like the barrier to entry has been lowered incredibly, which is great.
Right.
Which is great. I mean, it's one of the reasons that I always one of my biggest regrets was something that I can't do anything about is being born way too early. I would love being a 15-year-old right now, like having the whole entire summer to myself, not, just doing all my homework and then just learning to do animation and just making my first video game when I'm still a teen. That's so cool. I hope
we actually had a teenage developer on the show a little while back.
That's great. I love that. I love that. How old were they?
About that age.
Yeah, about
15.
I think
so
now
good.
They're probably around 17 because it's been a while.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Can you imagine just what an incredible head start you get if you I mean, Yes, they're easier to make, but they're still some of the most complex things that you can achieve. And if you're already working on something at 15, it's awesome.
Here in the States, some schools actually have like programming courses you can take in high school.
That's really cool.
So you get one hell of a jump start on stuff like that. Because back in the day, this was like college level stuff.
Yeah.
But now they have it distilled down to somebody who's a high schooler can at least get started.
That's so cool. And I'm really envious of people who can do both programming and graphics. I don't know anything about programming. I could never do it. Like,
it's very much a different mindset thing.
It is, yeah. And that's why
there are a lot of
so
people
rare,
who can program but can't art. And there are a lot of people who can't art but can't code to save their lives.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. And, with this medium, it was the programmers who led the charge initially.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's true. We are pretty much the opposite. we're a very atmosphere and graphics and world first kind of studio. Like, we don't really rely that much on technology. I mean, we do use Unity, but we use this great tool that's called Adventure Creator, and we do customize the hell out of it. Like, we add a lot of stuff to it. Like, especially with our second game, we add a lot of stuff to it because it's this tool that's made so you can very easily set up a classic style point and click adventure. And we tweaked it a little bit more visually for our first game. Like just adding like stuff like real time shadows and lights and that kind of stuff that most 2D adventure games didn't have back in 2019 when we released it. But yeah, we very much rely mostly on visual impact, atmosphere, story, that kind of stuff. That I'm not trying to take away from our programmer, who we make him do a lot of crazy stuff. It's just like he's in constant contact with the guy who made this great guy who made the plugin, and always requesting weird features, and it's very cool. We made our first game very very much a classic style. Like, we took the structure of a classic LucasArts point and click adventure, and we added our story and our characters to it. We were like, trying not to bite off more than we could chew. We were like, this is the first time we're making a game. We're going to take this tried and true formula and then, ride it all the way to the end and just add our story and our characters and our art and all that kind of stuff. And it worked out great. For our second game, we were like, okay, let's try to do something else. What if instead of having an inventory, you have a spell, like you have a spell wheel instead of your inventory. Okay, that's cool. But what if you could customize your spell wheel? And, a lot of cascading decisions that, again, as we mentioned before, made the game take 5 years to develop instead of the 2 we planned for. But yeah, that's how these things go. I mean, what can I say?
And I think that's a good enough transition to really get into Near Mage.
Yeah.
Your current project.
Yes. Sorry, you cut off there a bit.
Yeah, he's been having connection issues. Give him a minute.
Sure.
What is Near Mage?
So Near Mage is, in essence, it's much like our first game. It's an adventure game. Except it has a little bit of it's mostly a classic adventure game, but it also has a little bit of DNA from other genres, just a tiny bit, like a little bit of RPG, a little bit of visual novel. Basically, the main difference between our first game and our second game is that with our second game, we wanted it for it to be as accessible as possible to people, to people who've never played an adventure game, for example, because we had that experience. Like, making a classic style adventure game is great, but a lot of the times, a lot of people would just sit down at expos and try to play the game, and if they hadn't played a point and click adventure game at all, they were stuck. Not just because they didn't know what to do in the game, they were stuck just because they couldn't understand the UI and the way you interact with everything. And we thought, okay, let's make a game that doesn't feel dumbed down, that feels interactive, and that feels very immersive, but at the same time is very friendly to everyone. Which is why, you can play it. Well, let me tell you what the game is about, actually, first and foremost. It's about this young girl from the US who gets a letter from her great aunt in Transylvania, where we're from, by the way. We're in Transylvania. And, she gets invited to stay over for the summer. She's just finished high school. She doesn't know what to do, what university to attend. And once she's there, she realizes that there's this veiled magical town right next to the town where her great aunt lives, and there's that's where the Transylvanian Institute for Magic is, and that she comes from a long line of witches, and she can study there to be a near mage. So what is a near mage? Basically, a near mage is a student of magic. It's it's what students are called before they take their final exam and they finally become mages. So that's the setup of the story. And so we thought, okay, this is a story that a lot of people can relate to, especially, if you want to just relive your college years, or if you're someone who is actually in that situation. It's something that I get a lot of people can relate to. And also it was a great reason for us to sit down and re-examine the way adventure games work, and what makes them friendly and what makes them not so friendly. And that's why, for example, you can control the character both with your mouse by pointing and clicking, but at the same time you can just pick up a controller and control her directly. And then the hotspots, instead of having to hover over the hotspots, as you walk by them, the hotspots will show up and you can interact with them. And just trying to make this game as initially friendly as possible for everyone to be able to jump into and understand, and then complicate things as we go along. And also one of the changes that we made, I mentioned before, like in point and click adventures, you play, like you have this collection of weird things that you carry around, that you pick up and carry around, like you would pick up, I don't know, like a chicken with a pulley in the middle is the classic example. And then you would use on the world, and that's great. But that's one of the reasons that sometimes, I don't know if you guys feel the same, but that's why I guess classic style adventure games work more for comedy themed games than for serious games, right? Because
it
depends. Yeah, I guess. Yeah. Depends on how realistic it is to carry something huge in your inventory, for example, right? In a serious game, I guess.
Once again, it depends on how serious what you're going for here.
Yeah.
Because like I was raised on the King's Quest games.
Oh God, yes.
Which are fairly serious affairs, but they take place in the realm of fairy tales.
Yeah, so. Yeah. Great games, by the way. Pretty difficult for me. Pretty difficult for me, I have to say.
I'm like, that's a thing that Sierra like to do. They made their games very difficult.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For several reasons. It was different times back then. A game had to last you a lot longer, and then you had the help lines, like the tip lines, and that's that kind of stuff. Yeah. So yeah, that's the kind of stuff that we were examining, and we thought, hey, but theme is very important. Why would a magical student walk around with different stuff in her inventory? Because that's how you interact with the world. In adventure games, like the way you interact with the world is you either examine hotspots or you go to your inventory and use them on stuff. And we're like, wait a minute, why don't we have the inventory be a spell inventory? Well, that makes sense. Well, okay, but how do you pick up spells? Well, you're attending. I'm just laying out just how we came, like the process of coming up with everything. We just tried to make it make sense, even from a logical perspective and also from a thematic perspective. Well, how do you learn spells? Well, you go and take classes. But okay, so you just learn you just go and study for this particular spell. Well, no. What if we made each class give you an ingredient? And then, depending on, you have 6 types of classes. You have earth magic, blood magic, wind magic, water magic, and soul magic. And there's another one that I missed. Anyways, so every time you go and take one of these classes, depending on which classes you picked, you can craft this certain spell, which is cool and also makes for great replayability because the next time you're going to play, or the other person that's playing might have chosen to take classes in a completely different order. And that means that when they're arrived, two different people arrive at a situation and they have a completely different spell inventory. And that's great for the player. It was a lot of work for us because this means that for every situation we have 20 possible spells and we have to account for all 20 effects of each spell. And now you can understand why it took us 5 freaking years to make this game. But I guess, it's there's this thing about people on Steam that I noticed. A lot of them replay, like a lot of people just play old games and don't really pick up new games, which is not great news for us developers. But if you're making a game with a lot of replayability, then you're giving that person another reason, like 2 years down the line after they beat the game, even if they know what's going on in the game, they're going to be like, okay, what if I replay this game and now I have an extra reason, because instead of casting, I don't know, Flame Dance in this situation, why don't I just cast, Firewolf Puppy or something? So that's a pretty cool, that's a great risk that we took there, and it was a lot of time to develop. But we sort of really we did this in order for the player to feel like they have so much, like that they actually feel like a mage, a near mage in this case. But that's the thing, a lot of the times adventure games can feel like you have this set inventory and you have 10 items in your inventory and only one of them works in that situation, and you're just sort of going through these gated situations and following this A to B process. And that's what we wanted to eliminate. And we said, we're like, what if all items in your inventory, in this case spell inventory, took you somewhere, like advanced the plot, but with different effects? And that's basically what we went for. Because one of the things that people really, people love adventure games in general, but the people who don't like adventure games don't like it because, let's face it, like the default state of playing an adventure game, if it's a relatively hard one, is being stuck. And nobody really likes being stuck. And it used to work back in the 90s when you didn't have the internet and stuff. Like it forced me to play, like to ponder over one puzzle in Monkey Island for months. But nowadays, if you have the internet and the walkthrough, they're always accessible. I guess it's not, it can work, but it's not as engaging as possible. And so that's why our gambit here was to try to eliminate all these dead moments where you're stuck and you don't know what to do, and always give the player options to go further, except make them think about their choice more than what the correct choice is. Like they're all correct choices. I guess it's a little bit inspired by the way Telltale, for example, handles stuff. Except in their case, it's more of like binary choices, like choices that you make via the dialogue tree, or you just make choices. In our case, it's about choosing the right spell. So as you can see, there's a lot of DNA from different things that we love, that we pull, and just trying to make the game into something, into this sum of things that we really, really love. Like, for example, another difference from Near Mage, another area where Near Mage differs from Classic Style Adventures is that in Classic Style Adventures, our first game included, like you solve this puzzle and you're granted access to another level, like to another area, and then you solve this puzzle and you're granted access to another area, and so on and so on. And so, the new areas that you get to visit are sort of like this reward for solving puzzles. But in the case of Near Mage, I was very much inspired by, I love JRPGs. I don't know if you guys love JRPGs, but I think they're probably my favorite genre. And I just love that freedom of movement. Like in Final Fantasy IX is one of my favorite games. And I just love just running around, the entire world, not being obstructed by anything, not being forced to stop. That's sort of something that really inspired us. And that's why we have an adventure game that's sort of an open world-ish game, which is also not a very frequent thing. Monkey Island did it, I guess. to an extent. It was sort of the sort of design that Monkey Island had. Yeah.
If you're looking for that specifically, the Quest for Glory series.
Oh God! Oh, now you're speaking my. Well, Quest for Glory 4 is a huge, huge, huge inspiration for Near Mage, and it's one of my favorite games too. Yeah.
Yep. We've actually talked to the creators of the Quest for Glory series.
They're great people, Laurie and Corey, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Again,
Laurie
our
and Corey
Rolodex is
Cole.
impressive.
It is. I mean, these people are legends. It's yeah, they're great. I didn't have the chance to meet them in person. I was on a call with Corey once. But man, I mean, what can you even say about those games? They were so ahead of their time and still so incredibly impressive. Like I'm sort of not actually replaying it because I just only pick it up, I guess, every. Yeah, sorry about that. I only pick it up and play a little bit of it like every few months because I don't really have that much time to play games anymore. But what an incredible series of games. And 4 is just so. 4 is my favorite. Well, maybe like the setting probably has a lot to do with it because it's basically Transylvania, except they don't call it that. They call it Moldavia, which is funny because Moldavia is also like another Romanian province. It's the one east to us, and very very cool game. But just impressive on all these levels because they had so many things that were timed. Like and the sneaking and the I don't remember how many types of characters you can be. 3 or 4? I don't recall. But just planning for all of that and developing all of that in the 90s, like I realize now with our super modern tools, just what an insane amount of work and creativity and dedication that must have taken back in the 90s. And I think that's one of the reasons that it's very important for people to play these older games, even if they, I guess it's not very easy to convince like a 20-something-year-old to play Quest for Glory nowadays. But if you know just a little bit about game development and like the challenges that it poses, and you play one of these games from the 90s, it's gonna absolutely blow your mind what these people were capable of back in the day. And not on Call of Duty. I don't think they were on Call of Duty type budgets back then. I mean, you know. I mean, Sierra was pretty big, yeah, but
certainly not that level. But especially Sierra, they were the cutting edge of that space. I mean, King's Quest V was a revelation when I saw it in like 1990 or whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, another adventure game that your title reminds me of is Loom.
Oh yeah. Well, huge fan of Steve Purcell, who did a lot of the graphics and the animation for Loom. Yeah, of course, because of the magic use, right?
Yeah.
Well, Loom,
use.
Yeah.
And, instead they decided to have magic as music.
Music, yeah, which was a pretty bold choice for the time. I mean, sadly, generally speaking, it's a very controversial choice nowadays to use magic because it's just a simple question of accessibility, because some people just don't have a musical ear, and that's why if you're a game developer and you are, if you want to use like a musical type puzzle in your game, might want to think about it, might want to research it, because it can be very frustrating if you're just not equipped to do these, it would be like me having to solve a 5th grade math problem in a game. That's where my experience with that game ends because I can't do it. So that's
this just came up because we just reviewed the remake of Riven.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah, Myst and Riven. They do a lot of sound puzzles, especially Riven.
Yeah. I've never. I have to admit this. I've never played those games. They're very highly regarded. Like I know about them. I think they look great.
They were never my cup of tea.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
But I can.
Was it because the puzzle aspect feels a little bit more divorced from the narrative? I don't know. I'm just asking because I don't know how it goes.
Yeah, that like I don't know. I just don't like that style of game.
Mm-hmm. And also the slowness, the
Slowness doesn't
disc
bother.
swapping, I don't like the way they did the camera. Personally,
it's not free walking, right? Is it warping from location to location?
Not in the original Myst or Riven. Like,
well, they couldn't do it back then from a technical standpoint. I don't think. Yeah, it was all pre-rendered, right?
Yeah. Yes.
It was built off a system called HyperCard from back in the 90s, early 2000s.
So basically, going from node to node, right?
Basically,
yes.
It was a fancy PowerPoint in a way.
That's a nice way to describe it.
It was exactly that.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's probably the most apt comparison I could have for it.
Well, I mean, you can sort of extrapolating. You can sort of look at adventure games this sort of the same way. Well, more like a fantasy comic book. Yeah, true, very true.
Anyway, now getting to your magic system, it sounds like there's some involvement here, like beyond combine the thing and the thing and you get the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's an interesting design decision when you come up with the spell choices, because it's the blank page thing, and the way we designed everything was to have spells, our philosophy was to have spells that don't feel like obvious solutions, but that feel like something that is pretty cool, and you want to just try it out to see what it does, and whatever happens, and that's sort of that sort of stems from the whole idea of being a near mage, like a student of magic. You're not, usually video games are all about being, they're a power fantasy. You're this incredible wizard that can just shoot lightning out of his or her fingertips and just kill everyone and stuff. Near mage is not about that. It's a story about coming of age and learning to be okay with your mistakes no matter what the result is. And that's why we're afraid, we're very aware that people are going to save scum, like before using a spell, they're going to save and just try it. And if it doesn't, I mean, you can't really eliminate that,
Look, if you played adventure games in the 90s, you were raised on that.
Yeah,
especially on the Sierra side of things.
Yeah, because they killed you. Yeah.
Well, it's not just that they killed you.
Yeah, you could screw yourself.
You could render your game unwinnable.
Yes,
and the world, it's not like an immediate thing. It's you're 20 hours in, and God, I can't end this.
Yes, and it's not at the worst part. I mean, that's bad. But the worst part is that sometimes it's not signposted, and you're in this dead man walking situation where you're not even told that you can't progress anymore. And so,
Sierra.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's why I preferred LucasArts. I have to say, not just that.
Well, I mean, LucasArts hated that style. That's why they eventually they had a couple there. Looking at you, Zach McCracken and Maniac Mansion, where they were more like the Sierra games. But that's why they rebelled against that style, and I think that won out in the end, because there's an adventure game that kills you, it gets you stuck, that sort of thing.
Yeah,
because
or
they realize the real challenge,
and then they let you go back and get the thing.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, if I don't remember how Sierra games are, do they autosave and rewind you back to right before dying?
No,
I don't think they do. Right?
If you didn't save, you're starting over.
Oh God. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, we came a long way from the 90s, didn't we?
We did. Anyway, so we are running low on time here. So I think I will wrap things up by asking, how much longer do you think Near Mage has before it will appear on digital storefronts? And have you managed to meet out pricing yet?
Yeah, we are doing our utmost to have Near Mage launch this year. So I can't be more. I can't. I wish. I mean, I'm not teasing or anything. We really don't know when we're going to be able
we know
to
how that
launch.
goes.
Yeah, because we're still, like the entirety of the game, like assets wise, except for the voices, is completed. But just as you can imagine, with all these completely different situations and all the things that we have to account for, implementing and testing takes a lot. But it's definitely going to be this year. And we're probably looking at $19.99, just like we did for our previous game. That's probably going to be the cost. I have to say, inflation is a thing. I think most indie games in our price bracket should actually be $24.99 with the way things are going and just like the amount of. But I mean, yeah, that's what we're working for. That's what we're working with. Like $19.99 is this. I guess it's like a psychological threshold, and it's very risky to go above it. But what's going to be cool and what we're really excited about is we're going to have this cosmetic DLC, and I don't think many adventure games do this. So you're going to be able to buy this DLC. That's not going to affect the way the game plays or anything, but you're going to have so many options to customize your character. That's one of the influences from RPGs that I had. Like you never get to customize your character in adventure games because it's a lot of work. We know that now because we drew in tens of thousands of individual frames of animation, which is insane. But it's just great to be able to play and look just the way you want it to.
Yeah,
so
it's
that's
one of those things
gonna
you
be
realize why it's in 3D games because you can just
exactly
literally pop off the skin, put a new one on, and just make sure it doesn't clip hard.
Exactly. You can't imagine how many times I was like,
why did they do this in 3D?
3D games, yeah. But hey, like this is what we love doing, even if it's very repetitive and stuff. And it also sort of limits you in the sense that, you can, as an animator, you can really go crazy and think, like, what if I add 10 more idle animations? Or what if she does this? And and this is one of those things where, reality bites you in the butt a little bit.
You
and
need
it goes,
something in the room screaming, creep is a thing.
No,
stop it.
Exactly. Yes. So that's what. Yeah, we're really excited about this, and we hope people pick up the game and also the DLC. And we really, really hope that people appreciate the amount of work that goes into our game, and not just our game. Like, I am a very big advocate of indie games in general. I know a lot of people who make adventure games, and I know just how much time and work and effort goes into it. And I just want to say that we are, as game developers, very, very appreciative of everyone that they could maybe be buying like a very heavily discounted AAA game for that $19.99, but they choose to support like an indie game developer who puts all their effort and their passion, all their time and love into these games. So we're super, super appreciative of that.
Indeed. Well, like I said, I'm certainly interested to see how this game shapes up when it comes out. It does look super interesting. So with that in mind, the game is Near Mage. Is it available for wish listing on Steam?
Yep, absolutely. So the easiest way to go is to do this is either look up Near Mage on Steam, or you can go to www.near-mage.com/Steam, and it'll take you directly to our Steam page. And wish listing helps a lot, because as we were discussing, visibility, the algorithm, the moment you release, Steam takes into account the number of wish lists, how many people follow the game, and that's really the make or break moment. It's very scary to make games, guys. You worked on something for 5 years, and the moment you launch it, you have no idea how it's going to be. So it's like the craziest gamble in existence, and just anyone wishlisting and adding us to their follow list is just, it's super appreciated, and it helps us a lot. So just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. And this was a lot of fun. Maybe we can do it again when we launch.
Oh wow! I just pulled
possibly.
up the Steam page on stream, and oh wow, this looks really good.
Cool. Thanks so much. Thank you. Yeah, we're really trying not to, like, our philosophy is not to cut corners, and as much as the three of us can do, that's even if it takes years and years and just working 14-hour days constantly, it's totally worth it.
Just don't burn yourself out, all right?
Oh, I can't. No promises.
Yeah. Right.
All right,
so
guys.
that'll about do it for this installment of Fragments Silicon. As always, be sure to tune in next time for our Sunday reviews. Since I didn't announce them on Wednesday, we'll be having impressions of Wastelander, reviews of Consortium Remastered, Mermaid of Xenor, and Ghost 1.0. So look for that on Sunday, and until then, I shall wish you good gaming.